The sun had just begun its descent, casting a blood-red hue across the vast expanse of cornfields. Dark shadows crept between the towering stalks, and any passerby would have known this was not just any ordinary evening. This was a place where the winds whispered secrets, and you could almost hear the soil breathing. In a small farming community, nestled deep within the heartland, a rumor swept through the streets like wildfire. A band of marauders had set their sights on the farm of old farmer Jenkins. They were notorious, feared across the region for their swift attacks and ruthless tactics. But foolishly, they didn't think twice about Jenkins, an old man, stooped and gray, who spent his days tending to his land like an artist caring for his masterpiece. As the marauders gathered near the edge of the town, their laughter echoed, rich with bravado. They polished their weapons and boasted about the easy score they were about to make. One of them sneered, a glint of malice playing across his eyes. The leader of the band, a towering figure named Reese, nodded solemnly, brandishing a knife that gleamed in the fading light. We'll be in and out before he knows it. We take his crops, and we leave him empty-handed. But as they set their sights on the distant silhouette of Farmer Jenkins's barn, the sunset painted an image that would haunt their memories for years to come. This wasn't merely a farmer. This was a man forged by the grit of hard labor and the weight of years spent in loyalty to his land. As they approached, he stood at the edge of his property, hands calloused but steady, his gaze unwavering. Jenkins had seen storms come and go. He had faced the wrath of nature, and he wasn't about to back down from a small band of ruffians. The marauders lurked like wolves, eyes darting and muscles tensed. They could smell the thrill of the impending confrontation, but the air grew thick with an unshakable tension. "Look, the old man's out there," one of the marauders whispered, surprised at the scene unfolding before him. Farmer Jenkins, undeterred, was stacking hay bales, his rugged figure almost blending in with the golden hues of the fields. But there was a rhythm to his movements, a deliberate dance of strength and purpose that suggested there was more to him than meets the eye. He lifted each bale with the ease of a man who had pushed against the ground all his life, grounding himself in the earth that had nurtured him. "Enough of the theatrics," Reese growled, momentarily shaking off his disbelief. With a swift signal, they charged forward, yelling and laughing, assuming Farmer Jenkins would flee in fear. But Jenkins, hearing their taunts, straightened up. He braced himself against a nearby fence post and fixed his gaze on the marauders, a storm gathering in his blue eyes. Suddenly, that moment of bravado vanished. For on that still evening, Jenkins did not scream or run. He did not flinch. Instead, he held his ground, sheer determination emanating from him like the light from a beacon in the dark. Reese shouted, igniting their courage with a loud laugh. "What's he gonna do?" The marauders surged forward, confidence swelling in their chests. But Jenkins didn't engage in their taunts. He stepped forward, his voice surprisingly steady. "You're on my land. I won't ask you again." The marauders stopped in their tracks, a moment of silence falling over the field. They shared uncertain glances, but Reese, ever the bravado incarnate, sneered in response. "What do you think you can do against us?" Jenkins took a step closer, the setting sun casting long shadows behind him. Emotion flickered in his eyes, reflecting years of hard work and unwavering love for both his land and the people that had cultivated it. "I've fought against storms and droughts." Suddenly, the banter shifted. What began as a lighthearted approach morphed into an uneasy tension, as the marauders realized they had underestimated this old man. They thought it'd be an easy win, but here stood Jenkins, resolute and unfazed, speaking truths that reverberated into the hearts of even the toughest thieves. Fear subtly replaced nonchalance as they inched closer, and doubt began to creep into their minds. "Let's just grab what we need and go, Reese," one of the marauders suggested nervously, glancing at Jenkins as if he were a hurricane, brewing but not yet unleashed. Reese scoffed, but for an unsettling moment, doubts lingered. A fleeting image appeared in his mind, the face of home, of warmth and the embrace of family, of nights basking by the fire without fear. Then he regained his bravado. "No," but just as he took a step forward, the ground beneath them seemed to shift. Jenkins lifted his head high, even as the chill in the air intensified. "You may think you're strong, but strength isn't found in numbers or weapons. It's in the heart. With a swift motion, he turned and ran toward his barn. The Marauders, taken aback, exchanged glances, unsure of this sudden movement. Then confusion morphed into surprise as they saw Jenkins emerge not with a weapon but with a simple pitchfork. The barn door creaked open, and sunlight caught glimmering objects tucked away inside. He brandished that pitchfork like a seasoned knight would wield his sword, his stance grounded and powerful. "Come and take what you wish, but know this. I will fight until my last breath," Jenkins declared, voice unwavering. In that moment, he became a guardian of his land, a fierce protector of everything he held dear. With a rallying cry, they charged him, but in their reckless sprint, they had underestimated the very soil they tread upon. Farmer Jenkins maneuvered with a deftness that betrayed his age. He sidestepped, driving the pitchfork into the ground, fortifying his resolve. He thrust forward, a strike aimed at the marauder closest to him. Fear painted itself across their faces as they realized this was no ordinary encounter. This was a desperate struggle between the thief and the guardian of the crops. Each marauder fell back, feeling the weight of their choice press upon them. They had come seeking an easy victory, but instead found themselves facing a lion. As he swung his knife, Jenkins ducked and dodged with the agility of youth, fueled only by the ferocity of his will. In the next few moments, the once boisterous marauders met resistance that felt like the wrath of nature itself. Every swing from Reese was met with surprising ferocity from Jenkins. Every misguided blow countered with wisdom and experience, an old farmer channeling the spirit of his ancestors. The ground shook beneath them, swirls of dust rising as the marauders began to falter. They scrambled, glancing around as their bravado shook loose like leaves in a storm. In desperate need of retreat, they lost the power of unity. Confidence turned to confusion, and what began as a raid morphed into sheer panic. Someone shouted as the remaining laughter melted into timid gasps. Just as they turned to flee, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the field, much like the fierce resolve that filled Farmer Jenkins's heart. Drawing strength from years of cultivation, Jenkins delivered another blow, this time extending his pitchfork as a warning. He thundered one last time. The sound rippled through the night, echoing against the quiet trees and the fields of golden corn. The marauders fled, tripping over their own feet, scrambling back like shadows vanishing into the night. They had come expecting an easy win, only to find that sometimes heart and grit weigh heavier than weapons. The silence enveloped the field once more. Farmer Jenkins, chest heaving, looked after them, the adrenaline coursing through his veins gradually fading into night. He took a deep breath, eyes on the horizon as the last of the crimson color slipped away. In that moment, he realized it wasn't just about defending his land, it was about standing tall for every person who had ever felt small in the face of adversity. As the stars began to twinkle, a palpable stillness fell over the fields, hugging the night like a warm embrace. Jenkins allowed a small smile, content in his victory, a testament to the power of unwavering spirit in the face of looming shadows. The old farmer stood tall against the night, knowing he had become not just a guardian of his land, but a beacon for anyone who dared to stand for what was right. In that quiet moment, he wasn't just Farmer Jenkins. He was a legend, taking a stand and draping himself in the unwavering resolve that lectures even the boldest of marauders in the face of fear. Here stood a man who would not kneel, who would not bow, who would fight tooth and nail for the soil that nurtured him, a simple farmer facing down the winds of fate. It was a powerful reminder. Sometimes, the hardest battles aren't won with might or swords, but with fierce hearts, refusing to be broken. And as the night draped its blanket across the land, the echoes of courage lingered in the wind. The sun hung low on the horizon, its fiery glow setting the fields ablaze in shades of gold and deep orange. In this silence, a band of shadowy figures moved like whispers through the tall grass. They were marauders, known for their swift and ruthless raids, their laughter punctuating the tranquility of the evening like a storm breaking over calm waters. They had heard tales of Farmer Jenkins, an old man, frail in their eyes, a relic of a bygone era. To them, he was just an easy target. Waves of arrogance swelled in their chests as they approached the edge of Jenkins's property, dark thoughts swirling in their minds. A few old corn stalks won't put up much of a fight. One of the Marauders, a burly man named Reese, chuckled, his voice dripping with derision. The others laughed, emboldened, visions of quick loot dancing before them. They waited, crouched in the shadows, their confidence simmering dangerously, eager to unleash the chaos they had grown so fond of. But across the fields, Farmer Jenkins stood alone, his weathered hands easing into the fabric of his well-worn overalls. He looked out across the tilled soil, a deep love for his land etched into the lines of his face. Years of labor had carved him into a man steadfast and sturdy, a guardian of all that he held dear. With every passing moment, the sunlight receded further, falling behind the distant hills like a curtain closing on a stage. The Marauders edged closer, creeping toward what they thought would be easy pickings. But as they closed in, something in the air shifted, something palpable, heavy with anticipation. Jenkins sensed it. He turned slightly, feeling the breeze run its fingers through his thinning hair. A flicker of intuition tugged at his gut. He had fought against many storms in his years, and he felt another storm brewing. Maybe they're just passing by, he muttered to himself, shaking off the gnawing feeling. But deep inside, he knew better. The Marauders moved in, their footsteps silent as they neared the Barnett's wooden beam standing proud, a testament to years of toil. Jenkins straightened up, a sense of calm in the chaos settling over him. He called out before they could make a move. The words echoed across the field like a challenge thrown down in a dueling ring. "What's this?" Reese called back, snickering at the absurdity of it all. The other Marauders leaned in, their bravado feeding off Reese's mockery. "Seriously, old man, this will be over before you even know it." But Jenkins held his ground, defiance lighting up the old farmer's blue eyes. "You think you can just take from me without facing the consequences? I've spent my life on this land." A moment of silence hung between them, thick as molasses, before it shattered with roaring laughter from the Marauders. They took one look at Jenkins' stooped yet firm, wiry strength beneath his seasoned skin, and laughed harder. Incited by their boss, their fear masked as bravado, they had come to this place seeking an easy win. The battle ahead looked like a mere formality. "Let's just get it over with," one of them muttered, sparking a sense of reckless energy. But before they could charge forward, Jenkins moved unexpectedly, his hands moving quickly toward the barn door. The Marauders paused, a sense of skepticism drifting over them. He emerged not with a weapon but with an expertly crafted pitchfork. Its tines glinted eerily in the last light of the day, a humble tool transformed into a symbol of resolute strength. "If you wish to take what is mine, you'll have to face me first," he declared, voice booming across the fields, rising above the dying light. Reese's bravado faltered for just a split second, but his instincts told him to lead the charge. He shouted, his bravado drawing his men forward, energized by the urgency of the moment. They rushed at Jenkins like waves crashing against a steadfast cliff, believing with every fiber of their being that they were unbeatable. But old Farmer Jenkins, forged in countless seasons of hardship, stepped gracefully to the side, deftly avoiding their initial onslaught. He wielded that pitchfork with the skill of a man who had tamed the unforgiving soil year after year. The Marauders had come expecting to overpower a frail farmer, yet they now faced a lion awakening from its slumber. He struck back with a swift jab toward the Marauders, startling them. One of them stumbled back, a look of sheer disbelief sweeping across his face. The old man had defenses grounded in years of resilience, a testimony to his unyielding spirit. The laughter that had echoed across the field turned into hesitant murmurs of confusion. Reese yelled, but even his voice was tinged with uncertainty. No one expected this old farmer to stand up to them, let alone fight back so fiercely. The tension began to shift. The Marauders, who had believed themselves to be invincible, now felt a creeping fear seep into their hearts. Jenkins eyed them, unwavering. With every move, he began to reclaim what they had thought was theirs for the taking. They swarmed him like wasps, but he became a whirlwind, slipping and sidestepping, shaking off their ignorance with each precise strike. And just like that, the fight morphed into an elaborate dance, a brutal ballet pitting experience against youthful arrogance. Every jab of the pitchfork was met with flinches and retreats. The marauders, now frantic, realized that the old man was more than they had bargained for. Fear knotted in their bellies. Reese took a step back, growing panicked. But it was too late. The chaos of battle had unraveled their composure. They weren't just facing Farmer Jenkins anymore. They were facing an embodiment of every struggle, every hardship, every storm that had ever swept through this farm. Jenkins bellowed, summoning every ounce of conviction. His voice echoed through the fields, challenging them to push forward. Each time they faltered, it was as though the land itself rallied behind him, a testament that rooted him to this soil. The earth felt alive, breathing alongside the farmer defending it. The marauders hesitated, glancing at each other, fear becoming palpable. One shouted, scrambling for a way out, but the spirit of the fight had rigidly taken hold. They could feel time tick away, every second weighing heavily, chased by the ghost of their foolishness. With newfound grit, they attempted to rally again. But Jenkins kept pushing, the pitchfork slicing through the air, striking terror into their hearts. Each grunt and shout coming from the marauders felt more like a plea now, pleading with fate to let them survive. Reese, now desperate, lunged forward in a foolish attempt to swing the knife. But Jenkins twisted and dodged, delivering a strike to Reese's side that sent him crashing to the ground. It was a decisive moment, a manifestation of the years of hard work that built not just the farm but a man ready to protect it. Panic spread like wildfire at the sight of their leader falling, and one by one, the marauders began to flee. They scattered like leaves before an autumn wind, abandoning their arrogance and bravado in a desperate bid for survival. Someone cried, while Jenkins stood tall, a triumphant guardian etched against the fading sun. The last remnants of the marauders faded into the horizon, their legacy of fear snuffed out by the flame of a fierce heart. Breathing heavily, Farmer Jenkins lowered his pitchfork, eyes fixed on the open fields. For a moment he felt the quiet return enveloping him like a protective cloak. The shadows of the marauders had been vanquished, the spirit of the land restored. He looked around the quiet evening, a smile creeping onto his face. The battle had been fierce, but it was more than a fight against marauders. It was a fight for his home, for all those who ever felt small in the face of adversity. It was a testament that sometimes courage lies hidden beneath the surface, waiting to awaken against the odds. With every sunset that followed, the farmer would stand tall, an indomitable guardian of the land, unyielding in the face of darkness. And as the stars began to twinkle overhead, Farmer Jenkins knew that he had carved a story into the soil, one that would echo in the heart of the earth for generations to come. Defiance against despair. That was the legacy of a tough farmer who rose against marauders expecting an easy win. And in every breeze that whispered through the cornfields, the echoes of his spirit would linger, reminding everyone that the heart to defend what is loved can bring down the mightiest of storms. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the expanse of farmland. It was the perfect setting for an evening raid. The air crackled with anticipation, carrying whispers through the rustling corn, where light danced off green leaves like a mischievous sprite. Somewhere in those fields, a man sat on a weathered crate, hands hardened from decades of toil. Farmer Jenkins was in the zone, tending to his thoughts as much as the crops surrounding him. But lurking just outside his view, a group of marauders stood hidden under the cover of tall grass, their eyes glimmering with excitement. They were known for their brutal tactics and ruthless raids, legends in their own minds. "This is going to be the easiest take yet," one of them said, a heavy-set man named Reese, brimming with swagger and confidence. An old farmer, the others snickered, a cruel sense of entitlement washing over them. They tightened their grip on weapons, joking about how they'd be feasting that very night. They had come for easy loot. They had come to take. Little did they know this wasn't just any farm. This was Farmer Jenkins's land, rich in history and spirit, and he wasn't about to let it slip away without a fight. As the marauders stealthily made their way closer, the sun dipped below the horizon, wrapping the world in dusky twilight. For Jenkins, it was just another day on the farm, another chance to nurture the land he had loved for so long. But as the last rays of light faded, the unsettling feeling in his gut grew. He noticed shadows flitting among the crops, felt the weight of tension in the air like a storm ready to break. When he finally spotted them, crouched and whispering, his heart raced, not with fear but with fierce resolve. "You picked the wrong place to trespass," he shouted, his voice booming across the fields. In that moment the marauders froze, their laughter dying abruptly. They hadn't expected him to confront them, especially not with such boldness. "What's this?" Reese taunted, trying to mask the unease creeping into his chest. But in the fading light, a different picture was painted. Farmer Jenkins stood tall, shoulders squared, his hands steady as he gripped a sturdy pitchfork he had just propped up against the crate. "I won't repeat myself," Jenkins said, his voice steady, but laced with an unyielding grit that could not be ignored. "You think you can just come here and take what is mine?" For a heartbeat, the air hung thick with tension, memories of long-fought battles stirring in the hearts of those who faced him. The marauders' bravado wavered, laughter turned to nervous shuffling. They had not come prepared for this man, this old farmer, wielding a pitchfork as if it were a sword. Reese rallied his crew, but uncertainty threaded through his words. They charged at Jenkins, their youthful energy igniting a chaotic rush, intent on overpowering what they perceived as an easy target. Jenkins sidestepped, a fluid movement born from years of working his land. He thrust the pitchfork forward, catching the lead marauder across the chest, sending him staggering back. A shock of pain flashed in the man's eyes. In that instant, they realized this farmer was prepared, ready to fight for everything he held dear. Fear seeped into the marauders like moisture into cracked earth. They hesitated. One of them stammered. Jenkins pivoted, his eyes fierce, glinting with the determination of a man who had witnessed the fury of nature and survived. "I've weathered storms much worse than you," he declared with an intensity that sent a chill down their spines. The marauders floundered, the realization crashing down on them like a weighty wave. They had come seeking easy prey, but they were faced with an old man who embodied the strength of the earth itself. Reese barked, but his voice lacked its usual authority. As they surged in, Jenkins met them like a defensive fortress, each movement calculated and precise. He dodged, striking with the pitchfork again, leaving angry marks on their bravado. One marauder stumbled and hit the ground, moaning in surprise and pain as he felt the earth come alive beneath him. Reese barked again, his aggression ebbing, replaced by a desperate pulse of caution. Fear had begun to consume them, and they were painfully aware of it. They were no longer a unit, and as fear seeped into the cracks of their confidence, they became individuals lost in the storm of battle. The fight began to feel less like a raid and more like a dance, a brutal, primal dance of survival. Jenkins moved gracefully, his decades of experience evident in every jab and parry. The marauders, with no strategy and driven solely by greed, floundered like fish out of water. They wrestled against a current they couldn't comprehend, desperately trying to engage in a fight they thought would be easy. But they didn't realize that Jenkins was more than just an old man defending his land. He was a man tied to his roots, a warrior forged from the fire of a lifetime. The corn whispered around him, a testament to the struggles he had faced, the seasons he had endured, his ancestors watching over him, encouraging him on. He called out, grinning through gritted teeth, each swing of the pitchfork reclaiming a piece of his spirit. The farmers of old had taught him that the heart of a man is what truly defines him, not his age, nor the weapons he wields. Reese, his earlier confidence shattered, backed off. He desperately blurted, but the words fell flat. What could he offer this farmer that would make him yield? Jenkins pressed on, each strike echoing as if the land itself roared in encouragement. "You'll have to do better than that," he taunted, slicing through the air with precision. With every marauder that fell back in retreat, a flicker of hope ignited in Jenkins's heart. This fight wasn't just for his farm. It was a fight for everyone who had struggled against those who sought to take away from them. Suddenly, one of the marauders, seeing the tide turn, turned to flee. He sprinted for the tree line, fear lending him wings, a breathless scream tumbling from his lips. The remaining marauders, now in disarray, felt an instinctual urge to retreat. Suddenly, they were not marauders. They were terrified children scrambling from a nightmare. Reese yelled, but his voice echoed hollow, filled with despair. Jenkins wasn't just standing his ground. He was a force, a reality they couldn't conquer. The old farmer stood at the center of his field, as if he were a mighty oak, unmoved by the tempest swirling around him. As the skies turned darker, the last of the marauders fled, hearts pounding and breaths ragged. They had come expecting an easy win, but were met with the unwavering spirit of a man who wouldn't allow his home to be stripped away. Jenkins lowered his pitchfork, breathing heavily, sweat mingling with the dirt on his forehead, the adrenaline slowly ebbing away. He had successfully defended his land, but more importantly, he had reaffirmed a truth. Strength comes in many forms, and sometimes it takes a tough farmer to stand against the storm. In the aftermath, as silence draped over the land like a comforting blanket, Jenkins took a moment to catch his breath. He surveyed the fields, the crops still standing tall, protected. He knew there would be more storms to weather, both natural and man-made. But in this moment, he felt an undeniable sense of peace. He had become more than a farmer. He had become a guardian, a warrior fighting for the heart of his home. Looking back at the trails where the marauders had fled, he felt the haunting echoes of the struggle slowly fade into the wind, a reminder that courage and tenacity can rise against folly and greed. The threats may always loom, but they would always be met with a spirit that had seen too much, fought too hard, and loved too deeply to back down. As the stars flickered into existence, casting soft light over the fields, Farmer Jenkins smiled. With every breath, life pulsed through him, a testimony to resilience and a reminder to every soul connected to the earth. The heart of a farmer beats strong, unwavering in the face of fear. And that heart, when ignited, can guard against the fiercest of marauders, lighting the path for those who dare to stand for what is right. It wasn't just his farm, it was his legacy, a testament to the power of a spirit determined to fight against all odds. And as long as that spirit thrived, he knew he would always call this land home. The sun dipped low on the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and purple as a chill crept into the air. In the heart of the field, Farmer Jenkins wiped the sweat from his brow, his hands calloused but steady. He had spent the day tending to his crops, the familiar rhythm of planting and pruning offering a kind of peace. But now something felt off. A low noise like grumbling thunder disturbed the tranquility. In the distance, shadows moved. Figures lurking among the trees lined the edge of his property. Jenkins squinted, hearts pounding in his chest. He recognized the lean, rough silhouettes. Marauders. Their infamy had spread like wildfire, spreading fear and chaos wherever they roamed. "Damn," he muttered under his breath, his heart racing as he dropped his tools. He had heard the stories. These marauders came for plunder and they never showed mercy. They had become a scourge for nearby farmers, leaving destruction in their wake. Most folks would pack up and run, but not Jenkins. He was no ordinary farmer. He had roots that ran deep, deep as the very soil he toiled day after day. With determination bubbling inside him, he took a deep breath, grounding himself against the fence that lined his property. There was no sense in escaping. If they wanted a fight, so be it. He wasn't going to let the land he loved fall into the hands of those who thought might made right. Meanwhile, just beyond the tree line, the marauders gathered in hushed whispers, their faces illuminated by the last golden rays of sunlight. Reese, the self-appointed leader, stood tall among the group, confidence boiling over. "Just an old man standing between us and our spoils," he chuckled, brandishing a wicked-looking knife. The crew clapped him on the back, laughter erupting as they imagined the easy loot. They thought this would be a simple raid get-in, grab what they wanted, and be gone before sunset. Little did they know, they were about to awaken a storm they couldn't contain. Farmer Jenkins stepped out from behind the fence, pitchfork raised high, the setting sun casting him in a fiery silhouette. He shouted, his voice cutting through the air with a power that belied his age. That unexpected assertion hung in the air like a challenge, transforming the marauders' bravado into bewilderment. They paused, glancing at each other with uncertainty, a flicker of doubt simmering beneath their bravado. One of them hissed, attempting to keep his composure even as fear clawed at him. The group had been built on the thrill of conquest, yet here they were, questioning their own arrogance. With a deep breath, Jenkins took a step forward, defiance etched into the lines of his weathered face. "You're not welcome here," he declared, firm and unwavering. "I've worked this land my whole life." Maybe they should have seen it coming. His spirit was the kind that couldn't be broken. He had weathered storms, droughts, and the cruel bite of winter. As the sun slipped further below the horizon, that realization seeped into the hearts of the Marauders. This wasn't an ordinary farmer they faced. He was a man bound to the land by blood and sweat. Reese scoffed, nudging his gang forward. Ignoring their doubts, he charged ahead, waving his knife like a banner of victory. The Marauders advanced with all the confidence of an avalanche, but Jenkins stood rooted to his ground, pitchfork at the ready. In one swift motion, he sidestepped the first Marauder, his movements smooth and practiced. "You want it," he shouted, thrusting the pitchfork forward, aiming right for Reese. Reese had never expected to face resistance. As he stumbled back, a shocked expression painted across his face. The confidence that had fueled his bravado began to drain. He shouted, anger coursing through him. Jenkins countered, his voice full of conviction. The Marauders faltered, uncertainty lingering like a fog in their minds. This was no longer just a stroll through the fields. This was a battle for survival, a challenge they never anticipated. Even their laughter, once so loud, began to fade, replaced by wary glances exchanged among them. Jenkins's heart raced, but it wasn't fear that fueled him. It was a fire ignited by love for his home. With every thrust of his pitchfork, he reclaimed what was rightfully his, a determination rooted in a lifetime of sweat, hope, and care. He wasn't just defending crops, he was standing firm against erasure. Reese barked once more, desperation bubbling behind his voice, the crew following behind him, a wave of youth charging recklessly into the fray. But Jenkins was ready, pivoting with agility, countering their every move. With each Marauder that charged, he knocked them back, the pitchfork's tines cutting through their bravado. He was a whirling dervish, a whirlwind of resistance amidst the chaos, elevating him to something greater than an old farmer battling those who had underestimated him. As the shadows lengthened and the first stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, the fight grew more chaotic. Jenkins delivered blow after blow, fear and adrenaline intertwining in his veins, igniting a desperate fight in him that hadn't existed just moments before. But the Marauders were calculated in their raw aggression. They rallied, trying to flank him, hoping to divide and conquer. One Marauder lunged from the left, their blade glinting menacingly, but Jenkins instinctively ducked, thrusting the pitchfork back with a bare amount of hope. It connected, sending the Marauder sprawling to the ground, breathless. Reese roared, rage glazing over reality. But even as he shouted, doubt clawed at him. He could feel it, the eerie sense that this was more than a simple raid. This was a battle against grace, grit, and resolve. Around him, the gang was beginning to falter. The steadfastness radiating from Farmer Jenkins was like a force field, igniting a challenge deep within their bones. But one Marauder, fueled by a need for glory, rushed Jenkins again. In a moment of desperation, Jenkins sidestepped to avoid the blow but lost his footing, slipping in the dust. Panic surged through him. Was this how it would end? But it wasn't just fear. It was pure instinct that caught him mid-fall. He drove the pitchfork into the ground, using it to steady himself just in time, redirecting the Marauder's momentum, letting him spiral past. Caught off guard, the Marauder stumbled forward, crashing into his teammates with a thud. They fell like dominoes, and in that instant, Jenkins roared with determination, rising again like a figure emerging from the depths. It wasn't just an old man. He was the weight of every farmer who ever fought for his home. Fear gripped the remaining Marauders now as they scrambled to regain composure, panting heavily, fighting against the reality that they were losing. They exchanged frantic glances, looking for leadership, looking for hope, but all they found was a man standing between them and disgrace. Jenkins shouted, the authority in his voice taking them aback. The boldness in his stance was magnetic, tethering a sense of urgency into the air. It ignited something deep inside him, every ounce of love for the land bolstering his strength. And in that moment, something began to shift. Reese shouted, leaning into his waning bravado, his face reddening with fury. But reality had dawned. It was becoming increasingly clear that they were confronting the unyielding spirit of a man who had nothing left to lose. The Marauders exchanged uneasy looks, hearts pounding with fear, visions of escape rippling through their minds. One by one, they began to scatter, desperation clawing at their heels. One of them yelled, sprinting for the trees, and the fracture spread like wildfire. Blinded by panic, they rushed past Jenkins, scattering like leaves before a fierce wind. And then it was quiet. Jenkins stood alone amidst the fading fray, the echoes of conflict simmering in his ears. As the Marauders fled, abandoning their dreams of conquest, shock and disbelief washed over him. The doubts had been laid bare and they had vanished into the night. Breathing heavily, he wiped the sweat from his brow, chest heaving as he took in the night sky, now sprinkled with stars like diamonds scattered across velvet. The battle had been fought, and he had prevailed, though not without scars to mark the memory. Farmer Jenkins slowly walked through the fields, surveying the aftermath, his heart swelling with pride mixed with a hint of exhaustion. The night stood still around him, peace returning to the land he cherished so deeply. It was a reminder that confrontations would always come, but it was the heart and tenacity that truly prevailed in the end. He bent down, resting a hand against the fertile soil, feeling the pulse beneath life continuing as it should. For tonight, he had not just defended his land. He had reaffirmed a legacy of resilience, the spirit of those who had come before him, and the promise to protect what was his. As the moon shone brightly, illuminating each row of corn that stood tall in defiance, Farmer Jenkins felt a newfound determination settle in his bones. He had fought against Marauders expecting an easy win, but had faced something much tougher, much stronger, a spirit fueled by love for the land. With every breath he took, he knew he wasn't merely a farmer. He was a guardian, a beacon of hope amid the shadows, holding tightly to the belief that as long as you stand for something, no one could ever take it away. And tonight, he would stand proud, knowing that in this battle, he had become the embodiment of all the strength and stubbornness that flowed through the veins of every farmer before him. The cycle of resistance had begun anew. The air was thick with an unsettling stillness, broken only by the distant rustle of leaves swaying in the evening breeze. In the heart of the expansive fields where the crops stood tall and proud, Farmer Jenkins was finishing up his day's work. He knelt, hands deep in the earth that had nurtured him for decades. As the sun dipped low, casting a warm, golden glow over the land, he felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. But that tranquility was about to be shattered. Not far from the edge of his property, a group of Marauders crouched behind a thicket of trees, their eyes glinting with mischief. They moved like shadows, silent and sneaky, plotting their raid on Jenkins's farm. "An easy score," Reese, the ringleader, whispered, a sinister grin spreading across his face. The others snickered, their bravado building as they visualized the treasures waiting for them, crops ripe for the taking, tools easy to steal. In their minds, this was going to be a quick and easy job. They believed they were a whirlwind, bringing chaos merely by their presence. Little did they know that they had underestimated the old farmer and, worse, the spirit of the land he so fiercely protected. As the Marauders crept closer, Jenkins began to sense a shift in the air, an electric tension that prickled at the back of his neck. He straightened up, wiping the sweat from his brow and scanning the horizon. The laughter, once distant, grew louder, and the weight of his gut told him trouble was on the way. "Come on, Jenkins. You don't want to make this difficult," Reese called out with a cruel laugh, stepping into view, his gang fanning out behind him. The old farmer's heart raced, not from fear but from a fiery determination that ignited deep within. He wouldn't let them take what was his. Jenkins thundered, his voice echoing like thunder across the fields. It cut through the Marauders' laughter, shocking them into momentary silence. The Marauders hesitated, exchanging incredulous looks. They hadn't come to face an old man, they had come for an easy score. Reese's confidence faltered just a bit. What's he gonna do? He scoffed, attempting to rally his crew. But now there was a crack in their bravado and it was starting to show. Jenkins stood firm, tall against the growing dusk, gripping a pitchfork, the weapon of a farmer but more importantly a guardian. "If you want something, you'll have to take it from me," he declared, his voice powerful and unwavering. Reese's bravado was still there, but the uncertainty in his eyes told a different story. The gang was now aware they weren't facing a pathetic old man, but a man forged by years of labor, sweat, and untold struggles. There was a fire in Jenkins's eyes, and it frightened them. With a daring yell, Reese charged forward, his mind racing and adrenaline pumping, hoping to reclaim his lost confidence. Jenkins reacted instantly, lunging to the side as Reese swung wildly, blade flashing in the fading light. The pitchfork soared forward, making contact with a nearby wooden fence post instead, sending splinters flying. Before the Marauders could regroup, Jenkins shifted his weight, expertly spinning on his heel. He thrust the pitchfork toward Reese, who barely dodged, fear creeping into his gut. There was something raw and terrifying about this farmer. He was no victim. He was a warrior of the land. Jenkins shouted, his voice fueled by years of stubborn resolve. The Marauders paused, the bravado melting away like morning mist. They had come to seize and conquer, but stood now in the presence of a man who wouldn't yield an unexpected guardian. More Marauders joined in, but Jenkins met them one by one. With every thrust of that pitchfork, he pushed back against their swarming numbers. The fight grew chaotic as they rushed forward, panic weaving into their strategy, their confidence now shadows of doubt. One Marauder cried, narrowly missing a jab, stepping back in fear. Jenkins was relentless, every strike and parry reflecting his life's work. A man who lived each day in harmony with his land, unwilling to surrender it to those who sought to exploit it. Even as the numbers stacked against him, he remained steadfast, using the pitchfork not just as a weapon but as an extension of himself. They were swinging swords, but he wielded the spirit of the earth, a force that had grown out of years of dedication and love. There was no clarity now, only chaos as Jenkins met them head-on, standing firm against their storm. The Marauders were unprepared for this kind of resistance. They expected fear, not ferocity. They had come expecting an easy win, and instead they faced a tempest. As the battle raged, one Marauder went down, a sharp jab from the pitchfork sending him sprawling. The remaining crew noticed, and panic bubbled to the surface as they realized they were not just fighting an old man. They were battling the tenacity of life itself. Reese snarled, but his words fell flat. The fight had turned, and fear was beginning to consume him. With that, everything changed. Just as the Marauders retreated, they crashed into one another, a chaotic tumble that felt like defeat. The sheer determination of the old farmer had shattered their will to fight, exposing a truth they weren't prepared for. Not every battle is won through numbers. Sometimes it's won through spirit. Breathing heavily, Jenkins took a moment to survey the scene. The Marauders were fleeing, trampling over their own comrades as they darted for the tree line. Sweat dripped from his brow, but amid his exhaustion, a renewed energy pulsed through him. He stood proudly, the pitchfork still gripped tightly in his hands, a warrior of the wild, not merely defending his land but reclaiming it, a guardian against shadows that sought to darken the light. The night air, filled with the echoes of struggle, faded into a heavy silence, a sense of calm settling over the fields like a thick blanket. As the last of the Marauders vanished into the distance, Jenkins felt a wave of relief mixed with pride settle in his chest. He had protected his home. He had become more than an old farmer. He had become a symbol of strength against those who thought might made right. With the moon casting a gentle glow over his fields, he lowered the pitchfork, stepping back to take in the beauty surrounding him, cornstalks swaying softly in the light breeze, the stars shining bright above. It was a serene moment, a reminder of why he had fought so fiercely, not for glory, but for the love of the land that had nurtured him throughout his life. In that stillness, Farmer Jenkins understood the greater truth. There would always be Marauders, there would always be challenges. But he also understood that courage, fierce and relentless, could conquer even the darkest of storms. He had faced down Marauders who expected an easy win and stood victorious, a testament to the unwavering spirit of those who dare to protect what is theirs. As the night deepened, Jenkins walked back through the fields, heart full of gratitude and resolve. Each step felt lighter than the last, every breath an affirmation of life. The battle might have been won, but the fight for the future continued, and he was ready for whatever came next. In the depths of the night, the flicker of stars overhead felt like a promise that strength lies not in might, but in the heart, and as long as he drew breath, he would stand against the storms that sought to take away his dreams. He was not just a farmer, he was a legend in the making, a symbol of resilience in the face of adversity, a mighty force amid chaos and shadows. And so, as dawn began to break on the horizon, casting silver light over the farm, Farmer Jenkins prepared for a new day, undeterred by the battles fought and ever brave for those still to come. His story had just begun, but the legacy he was building would echo through the fields long after he was gone, reminding others that even the toughest of marauders would find their match in the heart of a true farmer. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm golden light over the vast fields of Corn Valley. It was a peaceful scene, the kind that made you breathe a little deeper, feeling the weight of the day slip away. But out in the shadows, just beyond the shimmering corn, danger lurked. A band of marauders, infamous across the region, crept toward the unsuspecting farm of Farmer Jenkins. They were seasoned thieves, notorious for their attacks on small homesteads, and this time they expected an easy win. "Old man Jenkins won't know what hit him," sneered Reese, their leader, as his crew chuckled with nervous excitement. They had heard the tales. Jenkins was just an old farmer, weak and worn, someone who wouldn't fight back. But beneath the surface of this quiet land was a spirit that had been forged through years of hardship and resilience. Jenkins had weathered droughts and floods, sickness and loss, and each battle had only strengthened his resolve. He was not just a farmer, he was a guardian of the soil, a keeper of traditions that ran deep through his family. As the marauders inched closer, paintings of greed danced in their minds. They could already taste victory, the cash crops, the tools, the very heart of the farm itself. But Jenkins sensed a shift in the air, his instincts honed by years of labor whispering warnings. He was kneeling in the dirt, tending to the precious crops when he felt it, an eerie stillness that settled over the fields like a heavy fog. He looked up, scanning the horizon, and spotted the marauders lurking near his fence. The sight sent a chill racing down his spine. "Not today," Jenkins muttered fiercely to himself, determination bubbling within as he rose to his feet. He gripped his pitchfork, not just a tool for the farm, but a weapon he would wield fiercely to defend all he held dear. Reese called out, stepping boldly into the open. There was a mocking tone in his voice, a taunting lilt that suggested they were clearly in control. The gang roared with laughter, egging him on, but Farmer Jenkins stood tall, the fire of defiance flaring in his chest. Jenkins shouted back, gripping the pitchfork tighter, "This land is my legacy." The marauders faltered, stunned by the fierce challenge in his voice. What's he going to do? One of them scoffed, the bravado returning to mask their hesitation. They stepped forward, confidence barely hanging on, but Jenkins's eyes sparked with fiercely protective energy. "Leave now and you won't get hurt," Jenkins warned, his voice steady and unwavering. Reese exchanged glances with his crew, their laughter now tinged with uncertainty. But he wasn't about to back down. Rallying his courage, he raised his knife and with a wild shout charged at Jenkins. The marauders swarmed like angry bees, their intentions clear as they dashed forward, hungry for an easy win. In that instant, the farmer took a steady breath and moved like a coiled spring, dodging to the side just as Reese lunged. Jenkins thrust the pitchfork forward, striking out at the lead marauder. The weapon connected, sending the startled man crashing into the dirt. Jenkins bellowed, his voice echoing through the dusk. The marauders hesitated, shock spreading across their faces as they witnessed their leader falter. Jenkins had become a whirlwind of resistance, a force hardened by years of labor against the unforgiving earth. Another marauder yelled, attempting to flank him from behind, but Jenkins was too quick. He sidestepped, pivoting gracefully, using his environment to his advantage. He wouldn't let them surround him. He thrust the pitchfork down again, knocking another marauder off balance. Strikes landed, chaos erupted, and desperation filled the air. The crew's boldness faded, replaced by unease. They had thought Farmer Jenkins would be an easy target, a simple path toward riches, but the very soil he fought to protect had transformed him into a formidable opponent. One of the marauders shouted, fear coursing through him as he watched his comrades struggle against an onslaught they had never expected. The flame of fight within Jenkins burned brighter, stoked by their panic. "Come on," Reese shouted, trying to reclaim control of the situation, but the fear was palpable, seeping into their ranks. This was no mere raid. It was a battle against the spirit of the land, a tempest of resolve rising up against their greed. With each powerful thrust of the pitchfork, Jenkins reclaimed his home. He didn't just fight for himself. He fought for every farmer who had ever struggled against unjust odds, for every person who had faced adversity without backing down. He felt the weight of his ancestors behind him, each one lending him strength to face down the marauders who had mistakenly thought they could snatch what wasn't theirs. In the fray, Jenkins took a few calculated steps back, allowing the marauders to slip momentarily into disarray. They were searching for their footing, but he wasn't about to give them the chance. He shouted, the ferocity of his words filling the night air. That was when the tide truly turned. The marauders' bravado had crumbled, evaporated into the night. Realization dawned upon them. They were outmatched, not just by an old man, but by the fierce spirit of a protector. "Run!" One of the marauders yelled, panic taking hold. And just like that, they scattered, a tumult of wild-eyed fear as they tumbled over each other, retreating into the shadows from which they had emerged. They had come for an easy win, but instead met the wrath of a determined farmer. As the last echoes of their retreat faded into the night, Farmer Jenkins lowered the pitchfork, chest heaving from a mix of exhaustion and adrenaline. The once calm fields, now strewn with remnants of conflict, stood as a testament to the fight he had just endured. He could feel the vibrations of the earth beneath his feet, a reminder that he wasn't just a guardian of his crops, but a guardian of a legacy. He had fought not only for his land, but for every soul that had ever felt powerless in the face of greed and tyranny. In the flickering light of dusk, Jenkins looked out onto his fields, proud and resolute. It wasn't just the land that mattered. It was the spirit of determination that thrived alongside it. He would remain steadfast, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that the heart of a farmer beats strongest when threatened. As the stars began to twinkle above, he felt something shift within him. He had not just defended his property. He had reclaimed his identity, reaffirmed his purpose, and restored balance to the life he cherished. He knew the marauders might try again, but he wouldn't allow fear to grip him. The fight had taught him that strength lies not merely in the body, but in the heart and the will to protect what matters most. And as long as he drew breath, he would stand against the marauders and all that sought to take away his home. Tomorrow, he would till the field again, and the cycle of life would continue, unwavering and full of promise. But tonight, as he stood alone, surrounded by the remnants of conflict, he understood. He was more than just a farmer. He was a symbol of courage against the darkness. The land would always rise with him, and together they would face whatever storms lay ahead. And in that quiet moment, amidst the night's embrace, Farmer Jenkins smiled, knowing that even in the midst of chaos, the heart of a farmer beats strong, creating ripples of resilience that echo across the land. The battle was won, but the spirit of fight would endure, growing stronger with every season, leaving an imprint over the very soil he had nurtured all these years. The night was his, and so was the land, fiercely protected like the heart of a soldier, prepared for whatever may come next. The sun hung low over the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and crimson. In the heart of those sprawling fields, a man stood tall, Farmer Jenkins, weathered hands resting on the handle of his pitchfork. He soaked in the day's last light, feeling the warm breeze sweep across the rows of green corn. It was a moment of peace, a brief interlude before the madness of the world outside his farm encroached. But beneath that tranquility lay a storm brewing. A group of marauders, notorious for their ruthless raids, was just beyond the tree line, their shadows creeping closer as whispers flickered through the evening air. The marauders snickered among themselves, a gang of dreamers planning an easy score. "This'll be a piece of cake," Reese, their fearless leader, boasted, eyes glinting with unrepentant greed. "That old man won't even know what hit him." The others laughed, filled with confidence fueled by arrogance. They had come for the rich crops that Jenkins painstakingly tended, expecting to find him cowering or fleeing in fear. After all, what could one old farmer do against a band of hardened raiders? Yet, with each step closer they took, Jenkins's instincts kicked in. A sense of unease crawled up his spine as he caught sight of the marauders' gleeful anticipation in the fading light. He didn't have time to waste. Still gripping the pitchfork, he turned to gauge the distance, his heart pounding not out of fear but fierce determination. He wouldn't let them take what he had worked his entire life to build. The marauders stepped from the cover of trees, eyes wide with the thrill of their conquest. Look at him, standing there. One of them jeered, setting his hand on the hilt of a rusty dagger. But as Jenkins straightened up, you could almost see the sunrise in his eyes, a fire igniting inside him. He shouted, voice ringing over the rustling corn, firm and resolute. The laughter faded into an uneasy silence as incredulity swept over the marauders. An old man with nothing but a pitchfork. Was he really challenging them? Reese's bravado wavered slightly. He wasn't prepared for Jenkins's defiance. But just as quickly as the fear began to creep in, Reese grinned, masking the flicker of doubt. He barked, gesturing for his gang to charge forward. The gang surged like a wave, but instead of crumbling, Farmer Jenkins stood rooted, a pillar of unwavering resolve amidst the chaos. The marauders lunged at him, thinking they would knock him down in seconds. Jenkins sidestepped the first wave like a seasoned dancer, thrusting the pitchfork forward just as the first marauder reached him. The tine struck home, knocking the intruder off his feet and onto the ground, stunned. Reese shouted, his bravado crumbling as uncertainty painted his face. The old farmer had not buckled under pressure. Instead, he had struck back with the strength of a man who had faced storms, droughts, and life's unforgiving trials head-on. This wasn't the easy win the marauders had envisioned. Jenkins turned his attention to the others, rising like an oak tree as he swayed with the threat of the oncoming storm. "Do you want to fight a farmer?" He roared, fueled by the adrenaline coursing through his veins. The sheer courage emanating from him was palpable, drowning out any flickers of doubt in his heart. As the next marauder dove at him, Jenkins spun, narrowly grazing the man's side. The marauder stumbled but quickly regained his footing, moving back to launch another attack. But Jenkins was ready. He sidestepped again, thrusting his pitchfork with precision. One after another they came, each attack met with swift movement and a surprisingly ferocious counter. Jenkins was a man grounded in purpose. Each strike of the pitchfork sent waves of defiance echoing in the night air. He wasn't merely defending himself. He was standing for every ounce of sweat that had nourished his land. The marauders found themselves in a chaotic dance, fear clawing at their hearts. One yelled, stumbling backward as Jenkins aimed again. Frenzy began to take its toll as the marauders' confidence crumbled under the weight of the determined farmer's pushback. Reese yelled, desperation creeping into his voice. But it was too late. The palpable dread had seeped into their ranks, creating a fracture that formed within their unity. Jokes that had once flowed endlessly among them vanished, replaced by horrified gasps. Jenkins wasn't just a man with a weapon. He was a force of nature, channeling the very spirit of the land that had birthed him. The fight was not just for crops, not just for possessions. It was for his home, his legacy, a fierce resolve that burned brightly as he faced down the marauders. But just then, a burly man lunged toward him, swinging a heavy club. Jenkins saw it coming, his instincts honed from years of tending the land. He dropped low and dodged, the club narrowly missing him and smashing into the wooden fence behind. The sound rattled through the air, a reminder of how close danger had come. He called out, frustration flickering across Reese's face like a spark trying to ignite a fire. With renewed determination, Jenkins launched himself forward, aiming for Reese this time. The pitchfork pierced through the air like a lightning bolt, catching the marauder square in the chest. Reese spat, staggering back, but the anger in his eyes met the resolute fire of the farmer's gaze head-on. "I won't let you take what is mine," Jenkins said, each word like a stone thrown into the depths of the marauder's once unshakable confidence. He took a step forward, and the ground beneath him felt alive, filled with the memories of all the hard seasons spent nurturing life. a rush of strength coursing through his veins. With their leader faltering, the Marauders began to back away, glancing at one another in disbelief. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They thought they were the storms. Instead, they were the ones facing a tempest. "Fall back!" someone shouted, panic framing their features. One by one, the Marauders turned, sprinting away into the night, abandoning their bold claims, leaving behind the promise of an easy victory. Jenkins stood tall, chest heaving as he lowered the pitchfork, watching the last of them disappear into the shadows. The fight had been hard, but he had held his ground, spirit ignited with the fire of 100 generations of farmers before him. For a moment, silence reigned over the fields, broken only by the sound of his heavy breaths as adrenaline began to ebb. But just as he thought it was over, a realization dawned. A chill snaked up his spine as a sense of danger lingered in the air. Had they truly given up, or would they come back more emboldened by their failure? His heart raced anew, awareness sharpening his senses. Before he could gather his thoughts, a shadow loomed in the distance, a figure emerging from the tree line. Jenkins tightened his grip on the pitchfork, his instincts firing up again. Then he noticed the glint of metal in the moonlight. More Marauders, running back with fierce determination. This time they were equipped with firebrands, torches raised high, their faces twisted in a mixture of fury and desperation. Jenkins felt a surge of dread. "Burn it down!" Reese shouted, resentment pouring from his words, rage ignited by the humiliation of defeat. The Marauders charged again, their eyes wild and reckless, wielding their torches like weapons against the very heart of the land. Jenkins's mind raced. He would not let them destroy his home. He pivoted, scanning the area, devising a plan. He couldn't fight as he had before. This was a new threat, a fight not just for himself, but for the very essence of what made his farm a sanctuary. "Not here!" he shouted, lifting the pitchfork with renewed conviction. The Marauders hesitated for just a moment, the fiery torches illuminating the determination on Jenkins's face. They had regrouped, the flames reflecting in their eyes, revealing desperation and a hint of fear. Just then, the fearlessness of the old farmer ignited something within them, a storm of regrets. Reese stopped short, sensing the moment shifting again. Did they truly want to descend into chaos, to feel the pull of vengeance drive them beyond reason? In that standoff, an undeniable tension hung in the air, the kind that dances between hope and despair, courage and fear. Would the Marauders press on with their reckless plan, or would they turn and vanish into the night again? One tormented soul against a backdrop of conflict where the echoes of their previous battle reverberated, still fresh in their minds. As the clash of wills hung thick in the air, Jenkins felt the weight of the moment, a collision of past, present, and future all spiraling toward an uncertain fate. The resolve of a farmer stood resilient against Marauders expecting an easy win, caught in the decision of either embracing darkness or choosing the light. And in the flickering shadows of that high-stakes confrontation, everything hung in the balance. The night was darker than before, filled with a sense of impending action, where every heartbeat echoed like the starting gun of a race yet to be run. What would happen next? Would Farmer Jenkins stand his ground once again, or would fear take hold as the Marauders pressed forward with a vengeance unknown? The storm was brewing, both in the hearts of men and within the land they fought to possess. The night was far from over, the ending still unwritten, hovering in the air like a whispered secret.